Hi, Marguerite Schultz here from Living Well Psychology Clinic. Just touching base today on the idea of self-compassion. It's something that's very relevant at the moment and something that we are trying to increase in our lives here in our lives and with clients at the clinic to increase our self-compassion quotient. So, what is self-compassion? Essentially, it's actually just the act of learning to be kind to yourself in times that really matter. So for most of us, that would be times where we've reached our failure point, or when we're burnt out, when we're overwhelmed, when things are not going the way that we think they should. That is the time to employ self-compassion. That is not the time to be hard on ourselves, to push ourselves further, to tell ourselves we should be coping better with this. That's actually the time to stop and just take a minute and nurture ourselves and show ourselves a little warmth and love and encouragement and kindness. So that's what self-compassion basically means in a nutshell. There is a fantastic researcher, Dr. Kristin Neff, and I do encourage you to look at her resources because they are beautiful and very solid. And essentially she breaks self-compassion up into 3 components, which I'd love to share with you today. So the first one is kindness. So actually developing the skill of being kind to yourself, of being your own best friend, your cheerleader, your advocate when things are not going well, to actually extend mercy and love and encouragement to yourself and to actually start to treat yourself like your own best friend. That's what kindness means, kindness to self. And the second component of self-compassion is what she calls common humanity. And essentially what that really means is just acknowledging and accepting that pain and suffering and frustration is part of the human condition. None of us are above those experiences, and if you speak to anybody alive, they will be able to relate to the feeling of frustration, failure, worrying that they're not good enough, worrying that they haven't done well enough in their roles, for instance as a mum or as an employee or as a carer, that I should have done more, I should have done better, I'm not doing well enough. That's very common self-talk. And just acknowledging that that stress will come across our paths. What are we going to do with that stress? Is it going to define us, or are we going to manage it? And the third part of self-compassion is mindfulness. And that's where we look at the balance of managing those feelings when they come up. So for instance, the feeling of frustration or feeling overwhelmed, just taking a moment to actually let that feeling be there, to not shove it under the carpet. So we're not suppressing it, we're actually acknowledging it, we're letting it come up and surface, we're taking care of it, we're being aware of it, we're making space for it, and we're nurturing it. At the same time, we're not catastrophizing the feeling, and we're not going to let it define our behavior or run our lives, but we're just taking a moment. So before we reset and charge off again into achievement, we're just taking a moment to acknowledge the feelings that present and be sure that we're taking care of them, nurturing them, perhaps sharing them with a close trusted friend. So that's what being mindful of your feelings is all about. So those are the 3 tenets of self-compassion: kindness to self, awareness and acceptance that part of it is just the human condition, so we don't catastrophize it, and thirdly, being mindful and taking care of our feelings. So I would love to challenge you to increase your self-compassion component quotient in your life as well, because with most people, we're very good at being kind to others, but we're not as good at being kind to ourselves, and that's not okay. So I would love to challenge you this week to increase your self-compassion quotient. Be aware of when you need love, and make a commitment to yourself that you will be a soft landing for yourself when you need it. And I guarantee you that that will actually help you to reset even quicker and in a better way than if you just drive and push yourself without any rest and nurture and self-love. So there you go. That's the challenge from Living Well Psychology Clinic, and have a great week.